Growing up, Star Wars games felt like the coolest thing ever, but looking back, were they actually great, or did you just think they were good because we were kids swinging invisible lightsabers at the TV, convinced we were doing some cool shit? Well, let's find out. We're going deep into the evolution of Star Wars video games, from PS1 and early PC through Xbox and PS2 Legends, all the way to PS3, PSP, PS4, and finally the PS5 era with the Star Wars Outlaws. We'll talk about the dumb mechanics, what made them great, and whether they hold up today or if it's just a nostalgia, doing all the heavy lifting. We in the PS1 era, we have games like Dark Forces, Masters of Terrascasi, and Jedi Power Battles. You can say that the PS1 era was really rough, but it was definitely historic. Dark Forces kicked things off. You can say that it was basically Star Wars' answer to Doom. It gave us a guy who could shoot stormtroopers with the precision of a god, but he just struggled to jump across a 2-foot gap. Then we have Masters of Terrascasi. It was a fighting game that promised it's gonna have lightsaber duels, but it looked like two action figures glued together in a slap contest. At the end, we have the Jedi Power Battles. It was janky, was clunky, but yet somehow still magical, because for the first time you could actually swing a lightsaber in 3D. But one a lot of people remember, and one of my personal favorites, is Star Wars The Phantom Menace. At the time, it was a really big deal. You could actually play through Episode 1, walking around Mos Espa, slicing through battle droids, running through the Coruscant. It felt like the real deal. Now, was it perfect? Well, definitely not. The camera was really frustrating and the platforming sections made you want to snap your controller in half. But compared to a lot of action adventures on the PS1, it wasn't really terrible. I'd say it landed somewhere in the middle. If you were a kid in '99, it felt incredible to relive the movie. Were they all good? Yeah, no. But did we love them anyways? Absolutely. Now we're here for the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube era. Gaming truly hit its peak for Star Wars in this era, because we had Battlefront 1 and 2, which were straight up legendary. They had huge maps, space to ground battles, and the first time you could actually jump into the boots of a random trooper and feel like part of the galaxy war. Sure, the AI wasn't really brilliant, but that didn't matter at all. These games were built for chaos. Nothing matched the feeling of storming Hoth with dozens of players or finally unlocking a hero mid-match. These weren't just good Star Wars games, they were peak multiplayer shooters of the time. And then there was Knights of the Old Republic, which BioWare basically gave us the best Star Wars movie that never existed. Every choice mattered in this game. The dialogue was sharp and Darth Raven's twist, still one of the greatest reveals in gaming history. This isn't just nostalgia talking. Knights of the Old Republic holds up as one of the best RPGs ever made. We also got the Bounty Hunter, letting us play as Jango Fett. And this is not Jango Fett, this is Boba, his son, but anyways. Finally, not a Jedi, not a Sith. Just a jetpack, dual blasters, and contracts to hunt down. Was it flawless? Well, definitely not. Most of the levels of this game dragged, and the jetpack could be frustrating at times. But it nailed the fantasy of being Jango Fett in a way that no other game has touched since. And for fans, well, that was enough to make it a classic. Now on the PSP era. On handhelds like the PSP, Star Wars had some surprisingly good titles. Battlefront 2 Portable and Renegade Squadron weren't just side projects, they actually brought huge battles into your pocket. Sure, they didn't have the scale of the consoles, but when you played with your friends over Wi-Fi, it was amazing. And then there is Elite Squadron, which in my opinion deserved way more credit. This game lets you start a fight on the ground, hijack a ship, and continue the same battle in space, all in one flow. And mind you, for a handheld game in 2009, that was mind-blowing. Even today, a lot of modern shooters can't pull off that kind of scale. And of course, Star Wars The Clone Wars, based on the animated series. This wasn't just a tie-in, it felt like an extension of the show. It gave fans a chance to step into the boots of their favorite clone troopers and Jedi, while the series was at peak hype. I mean, it might have not been a technical masterpiece, but it nailed the style and energy of the cartoon just in the right way. Honestly, half the fun was just showing off that you had a PSP while everyone else was still stuck on a Game Boy. On PS3, the Force Unleashed dropped, and it was massive. Throwing stormtroopers across rooms, crushing ships, pulling down a Star Destroyer. It was the kind of over-the-top Star Wars power trip fans had been waiting for. The story of Starkiller added something new too, a darker, original tale that actually surprised people. Then Force Unleashed 2 came along. It looked sharper, ran smoother, and swinging two lightsabers at once felt incredible. Now you might say, what was the downside? Well, the campaign was really short and it didn't leave the same impact as the first one. But still, when you were in the middle of a fight, carving through enemies, it delivered exactly what you wanted from a Star Wars hack and slash. We have to have an honorable mention, which is the Republic Commando. This wasn't lightsabers and Jedi, it was gritty, boots on the ground Star Wars. You played as a clone squad leader, giving commands, breaching doors, sniping, and covering. It felt tactical in a way no other Star Wars game had pulled off. The squad mechanics were the highlight. Your team actually felt useful, responding to orders and holding their own instead of being deadweight. And it did have a darker tone because it really stood out. It showed the Clone Wars from the soldier's perspective, and it hit harder because of it. If there was a downside, it's that the campaign was short and left fans wanting more. But that is also why it is remembered so fondly. It was polished, unique, and it proved that Star Wars could be more than Jedi versus Sith. Even today, people still call it one of the best Star Wars shooters ever made. And let's not forget about LEGO Star Wars. These games are straight up classics, every movie retold in LEGO style, packed with humor, secrets, and clever level design. The controls were really smooth, the physics engine was solid, and co-op play made it a blast to play it with friends. The worlds really felt alive, the animations nailed the humor, and the pacing kept you engaged the whole way. Well, you might ask, what about the gameplay? Boy, it was addictive and endlessly replayable. For many fans, this was their introduction to Star Wars gaming, and it holds up perfectly today. These games are a proof that Star Wars doesn't need to be serious all the time to be good. In the PS4 era, we got the reboot of Battlefront. On PS4, two of my favorite multiplayer games ever released, Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2. They were really controversial for their time, but they are personally one of my favorites. Battlefront 1 looked incredible. Even today, the graphics hold up in 4K, which is insane for a game from 2015. The sound design, the scale of the battles, the feeling of actually being on Hoth or Endor, it nailed that Star Wars atmosphere. The maps were detailed, the heroes felt iconic, and the multiplayer chaos was exactly what fans wanted. But the launch content, well, what can I say? There was basically no content. Then Battlefront 2 released, which had a very rough start. The launch was rough, loot boxes, pay-to-win complaints, and a lot of backlash. But EA listened. Over time, they patched, expanded, and reworked the progression system. And the game came back stronger than anyone expected. The scale of battles, space combat, and hero gameplay were all improved, making it a true Star Wars experience, one that finally lived up to the promise of its predecessor. But at the end of the day, they just decided to pull the plug, and we all know how that happened and turned out. We got Battlefield 2042. Then came Jedi Fallen Order, and this was exactly what Star Wars fans had been waiting for. A single player adventure that actually felt like Star Wars, not just a skin on some multiplayer engine. The combat was real good and satisfying, taking cues from Souls-like systems, but keeping it more approachable. Lightsaber duels felt good, force powers felt meaningful, and the enemy encounters kept you on your toes. The exploration was another highlight of this game. Every planet had a unique environment, hidden secret, and the puzzles weren't overcomplicated. The story, well, Cal Kestis actually felt like a character you cared about, with compassion that added personality and moments that genuinely landed. And the wall climbing and some platforming sections could get repetitive, but they never really broke the flow. Overall, this game was full Star Wars experience, and one of the few modern titles that truly captured what made the galaxy so compelling. On PS5, we got Jedi Survivor. It built on Fallen Order in almost every way. Bigger maps, more combat options, and deeper story. Cal Kestis had more personality this time, and the story has more weight to it. Combat was smoother, with new stances and abilities that made lightsaber fights feel fresh. Exploration was expanded too, with larger planets and more freedom to approach objectives your way. It wasn't just more of the same, it felt like the proper evolution of the formula. If Fallen Order was proof that Star Wars single player could work again, Survivor just showed everyone how far it could be pushed. And there is a Star Wars Outlaws, the first real open world Star Wars game. On paper it's everything the fans wanted: blasters, ships, and planets to explore. And if you're a casual gamer or just a massive Star Wars fan, you'll probably have fun cruising around the galaxy. But let's just be honest, it doesn't break any new grounds. The planets feel a little too much like reskinned Ubisoft sandboxes, and the gameplay, where do I even start? The game plays it really safe instead of pushing the boundaries. It's not terrible, but it is nowhere near what it could have been. The potential is there, it feels like Ubisoft aimed for good enough instead of truly great. And in my opinion, it was a huge missed opportunity. So, were Star Wars games ever actually good? Honestly, some were legendaries and some were disasters, and a lot of them only feel good because they were our childhood. And that's okay, because the Star Wars games, just like the movies, they swing between genius and let's just say absolute but we always show up. Some of these games were iconic and others were just torture disguised as fun. Stay tuned and comment your favorite Star Wars game. Let's see who's honest and who's blinded by this thing that we call nostalgia. And be sure I'll be judging.